You know you've messed up when your train is so hot, the crew has to wear asbestos pants just to keep their legs from burning off. Today, we are not just looking at big trains, we are looking at engineering disasters so massive they literally shoved the tracks apart and had to be hidden away by the Soviet government for 30 years. We have engines that destroyed every rail they touched, and a prototype so useless it was retired right in the middle of World War II when they needed trains the most. Welcome to the heavyweights of history. Before we derail this video, smash that subscribe button because unlike these engines, it can actually handle the pressure. Here are 5 locomotives that were just plain too big. Let's start with a classic case of it looked good on paper. This is the Baltimore and Ohio class N1, road number 5600, named the George H. Emerson. Built in 1937 by the railroad's own shops, this was actually a pioneer. It was the first duplex locomotive and the first 4444 ever built. Now, duplexes are a bit controversial in the train world. They can be incredibly fast and powerful, but because they lack articulation, meaning they do not bend in the middle, they struggle with curves and are prone to wheel slip. But the N1 had a special problem. To keep the wheelbase from getting too long, the designers decided to get creative. Instead of putting the rear cylinders in front of the driving wheels like a normal, sane engineer, they mounted them right next to the firebox. This was a terrible idea. That space was incredibly hot and dirty, which caused the cylinders to wear out much faster than normal. Even worse, putting the cylinders there limited the size of the firebox itself. And on a steam engine, a small firebox means you cannot generate enough steam. The result? It barely worked. It was retired in 1943 after just 6 years. Think about that date, 1943. The height of World War II. Railroads were desperate for power. They were running everything that had wheels. And yet the N1 was so useless that even in a global war, they could not find a reason to keep it running. It sat around until 1950 before finally meeting the scrapper's torch. Next up, we have the Railways E-class of 1906. At first glance, you might say, hey, that's a tank engine. How big can it be? Well, look at the wheels and look at the reverse cylinder in the back. This thing was trying to be a heavy hauler in a small package. Tank engines are supposed to be efficient, but the E-class missed the memo. While it was technically more powerful than other engines on the line at the time, the cost of operating it was astronomical, almost twice as much as a standard engine. But the real problem was not the money, it was the heat. The cab was enclosed, and the firebox was huge. When this thing went through tunnels, heat built up and the accumulation was dangerous. It got so bad that the firemen actually had to wear heat-resistant asbestos pants just to do their job. I need to repeat that. Asbestos. Pants. I know this was the early 1900s when we put asbestos in everything, but that is not a working condition anyone should endure. Miraculously, this oven on wheels lasted until 1917 before being withdrawn. Because it was so big, they kept the boiler and used it as a washout boiler until 1931. Rumor has it, when they finally condemned it, they just dumped it. So somewhere out there, probably underwater, knowing my luck, the remains of this asbestos nightmare might still exist. Now let's head down under to Tasmania for the J-class, specifically the 2640 articulated tank engine built in 1901. This engine, known as a Hagen's patent, is the definition of too much engine, not enough rail. The J-class was large and powerful, which sounds great, but it was incredibly heavy. The Tasmanian government railways had very light rails at the time. When the J-class rolled out, it didn't just ride the rails, it pulverized them. It destroyed every line it ran on. This put the railroad in a tough spot. You have a powerful engine, but to use it, you would have to completely rebuild your entire infrastructure with heavier steel. That simply was not going to happen. Because the damage was inevitable every time it moved, there was no fix. It was a monster that ate its own road. It was scrapped in 1910. lasting only about 9 years, defeated by the simple fact that gravity works. We've looked at some ugly failures, but now we have to look at a beautiful one. Behold the Pennsylvania Railroad Class S1. I want to go on record. I adore this engine. It is breathtaking. Built in 1939, this 6446 duplex was the longest reciprocating steam locomotive ever constructed, and it had the heaviest tender. It was a marvel of the steam age. It was fast, too. Some believe it may have unofficially beaten the Mallard's speed record. It was stylish, powerful, and an absolute crowd pleaser. So why is it on a list of failures? Because it was just too big. The S1 had a massive rigid frame. It couldn't fit on standard turntables. It couldn't negotiate tight curves. This meant that this engineering marvel was effectively trapped. It could only run on a handful of specific main lines. It had zero utility for the rest of the network. While it actually did pay back its build cost, the writing was on the wall. Diesel was coming, and the Pennsylvania Railroad was broke after the war. Despite its beauty, the scrap value of all that steel was too tempting. This Art Deco masterpiece was lost forever in 1949. And finally, we arrive at the absolute champion of too big. Comrade, welcome to the Soviet Class AA20. Just look at the wheel arrangement. It is 4-14-4. That means 7 driving axles in a single rigid frame. It was the largest rigid frame locomotive in Europe, and it held the record for the most coupled axles ever. The Soviets had seen the Union Pacific 9000 class in America and thought, we can do that. But they missed a key detail. Union Pacific had high-quality tracks and straight lines. The Soviet lines did not. To make matters worse, the AA20 was designed to run on low-quality coal, which meant it needed a massive firebox, making it even heavier. When this 4-14-4 beast moved, the rigid wheelbase was 33 feet long, and it could not take curves. It would physically push the rails apart and destroy the points of the switches it passed over. It did not just derail, it disassembled the railroad. It broke its own couplers because they were not rated for its power. It made exactly one publicity trip to Moscow in 1935. After that, the Soviets realized they had built a monster. It was thrown into storage, and it sat there for 3 decades. They were so embarrassed by this failure that they did not even announce when it was finally scrapped in 1960. It became a state secret of stupidity. From asbestos pants to track-destroying behemoths, history shows us that sometimes you really can have too much of a good thing. Which one of these giants was your favorite? Or, more accurately, which one was the biggest disaster? Let me know in the comments below. A special thank you to all of you for watching and keeping this channel moving, hopefully better than the Class N1 did. Until next time, this is Mega Machines History. Thanks for watching.